Dave, it's been a tough slog, many obstacles in the way of first-time home buyers. What's it going to be like in 2015?
Well, Eric, I think we're going to see a recovery that's better than has happened the last couple of years. Prices have kind of leveled off. They're not the double-digit increases. Interest rates are lowest they've ever been. And the new government programs are certainly going to help bring millennials into the industry.
But do those millennials want to be in the industry? It seems that their ethos is they care so much about the borrowing economy. It's not about the fact that they can't get the money. They don't want to own a house.
Well, I think that's I don't think that's correct, Stephanie. If you look at our sales last year, 31% were to millennials. As they are aging, they're not only buying downtown, but now they're starting to leave downtown, go to the suburbs. They now have children, prices a little bit less expensive, and we're seeing a good recovery.
How does that compare? How does the behavior of these young couples, Dave, compare with what you saw, say, 10 and 15 years ago?
They're quite different. If they get married at a later age. They seem to be putting off decisions like home buying to a later age. I don't think
how much of that is cultural, though? How much of that is cultural, these decisions to have kids at a later age, these decisions to buy a home at a later age? How much of it is cultural and how much of it is economic?
Well, I think a great deal of it is economic. Obviously, they imitate each other, so culture does play a part. But they haven't had the jobs that they needed. They haven't had the income they expected when they got out of college. And now with the economy turning around, a little bit of wage growth, I think you'll see a big change.
So the more people who own homes or who want to own homes, clearly the better it is for RE/MAX. But do you think it's a good idea, Dave, for the federal government to be trying to incentivize more home buying and to deliberately attempt to raise the home ownership rate?
I can't tell you if politically it's the correct thing to do. I will tell you that it would help the economy greatly if the housing industry could get some legs.
But weren't we saying that in 2005 and 2006? So take politically out of the equation. I feel like in 05, 06, Barney Frank was telling Americans it was our birthright, part of the American dream, to own a home. Many Americans who simply shouldn't own a home.
I would totally agree. We went through a horrendous foreclosure mess because of the subprime mortgages. It was really a disaster for the economy and for our industry.
Can I go back to a point that you made just a moment ago about how it would help the economy if there were more home ownership? Why is that the case? Because if a landlord buys a home, so if more of these homes that are being sold are going to folks who are going to end up renting them out as opposed to being owner-occupiers, is that necessarily a bad thing? Landlords often invest in refurbishing the home in order to be able to charge a higher rent. And many of the people who are cash-strapped and end up buying a home have no cash. They have no money to go to Home Depot and buy new windows or caulking or floorboards or whatever, you know, drywall, whatever the case may be.
Eric, you're correct in what you're saying. If you look at some of these big box stores like Home Depot, they figured out that 60% of their sales occur within 6 months before somebody buys a house or 6 months after they sell a house. So it is a costly endeavor if you're going to do a resale. However, the thing that's good for the economy is new home building. Every house that's built, it's figured that's at least 3 or 4 full-time jobs that are created for a year. And we're at the lowest level of new home building in a decade.
But what happens if those new homes that are built, people either A, don't have the money to buy them, or they buy them, can't afford it, and they get foreclosed upon? I'm just not sure how that's good for the economy.
Well, I think that the economy has turned around enough. Dodd-Frank has put enough rules out there. For the most part, people are putting 10 to 20% down for the vast majority of mortgages, unlike 8, 9 years ago when the vast majority was almost no down payment.
How has Dodd-Frank affected the housing market? I guess I don't follow that.
Well, they put some requirements on the banks that the banks had to continue to own a certain percentage of their mortgages. Most banks create the mortgages and try to sell them off. And so if the banks have to continue to maintain a large ownership, then they can't reinvest the money.
What do you think, Dave, would happen to the housing market if some of the proposals to reform Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac went through? If, in fact, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were to become private entities, could take several years, obviously, before that happens, but they wouldn't have the government backing, and as a result, mortgage rates for lots of people would end up having to go up.
That's probably true, and that isn't the worst thing in the world that can happen. If you look at our neighbors on the north, they never had the subprime mess. They required people to put a 20% down payment, and you know, the real estate business is cyclical. Prices go up and they go down. People who have invested real money in a property don't just walk away because prices drop by 10 or 20%. They'll wait it out, and that way they don't flood the market with properties, and they know it's a long-term investment.
What do you think about hot markets? I just spent some time down in Miami, and my mind was blown over the fact that just 5 years ago, Miami was one of those cities that was in the epicenter of the crisis. Here we are. There's construction everywhere. There's apartments going for 10, 20, 30 million bucks. Doesn't that feel a little bubblish?
Well, I think that's kind of frothy. The truth of the matter is probably as much as 25% of the purchasers are cash purchasers from outside the country.
But wasn't that the case in 2005, 2006, all those Brazilians in Miami buying up real estate? What's different now?
Well, I think that what is different now is the prices were adjusted dramatically down. And so even in Florida, they're still well beneath the prices that they were getting 6 and 7 years ago.